So, Chris, I mean, I'm exhausted. I don't know about the rest of you, but that's quite a thrill ride, isn't it?
I hope so.
I think it is.
So.
I mean, it's kind of, for me, I watched it again over the weekend, and I mean, it's a proper classic thriller. It's a heist movie. You know, it's a caper with lots of people, so it's the Italian Job, and mixed with Das Boot, which is... I don't know what your references were. What were your references?
Yeah. Well, when I first met Kevin for the film, the two films that he spoke about, three films that he spoke about the most were The Treasure of the Sierra Madre and The Wages of Fear, and then the remake of The Wages of Fear that I've just forgotten the title of with Roy Schneider, called Sorcerer. Made by William Friedkin, and the idea being that. In the search for wealth, humanity is lost.
Yes,
basically.
the rules go out.
Yeah, exactly.
So you shot. I mean, it was terribly claustrophobic, and I assume that you obviously shot it in a massive, enormous, spacious studio with lots of space to move around. Is that true?
Yeah. We took over the 007 stage and we built rooms that were 18 times as. No, not at all. There's a submarine called the Black Widow that floats in the River Medway in Kent, and it's the type of kilo class sub that Kevin and Dennis, the writer, thought would be the right sub to use, basically. And so they'd already wrecked this space and fallen deeply in love with it, but you can't...
Is that before you'd done a recce?
Yes, exactly. Before I'd even got involved, it was like a script recce, and they I mean, it's amazing. Submarines are buildings, you know. That you just couldn't replicate with a set, or at least that's what everybody felt. The only problem was that this was a real submarine. It was really floating in the middle of a river, and you can't flood it or blow it up or set it on fire or do any of the things that we needed to do. So we ended up doing, probably 50% of the submarine material was on a real submarine, and the other 50% was on a set build on E Stage, and it was amazing. We had this, E Stage at Pinewood is an enormous soundstage, and we basically built a room smaller than a box room in a house in the very centre. The control room where they drive the submarine from was built kind of halfway into the soundstage, and there was an amount of corridor attached to it, and then into the tank at E Stage was built the room that explodes and the room that floods, which is the engine room.
They were connected then. So you had a dry end and a wet end.
Yeah, dry end and a wet end. Yeah, exactly. And with corridor at either end, and then the control room. The control room was built. Nick Palmer was the production designer. He had an amazing job. The control room was built so that we could shoot it in situ as a control room on the soundstage floor, but that bit of set could be lifted by a crane and put onto a gimbal rig and thrown around like a roller coaster. So when the guys are doing the Star Trekky thing of throwing themselves from one side to the other, it's actually the set that's going 40 degrees one side to the other. And I was sat outside while the camera was on a Libra head, and everyone looked like they were having a lot of fun in the set. But,
you were outside?
Yeah, we were outside.
So there was no shortage of... it sounds like it was, budget-wise, from your end of it, it sounds like it was provisioned reasonably well. How long did you have to shoot it?
So I guess that was the schedule side of things was, I guess, the financial compromise. So the whole film was shot over a period of 8 weeks. So the first 2 weeks of the shoot were on location at the house, at the Sevastopol bar, which is a deleted scene from the movie, and then the second section was 2 weeks in the real submarine.
Right.
The third section was 2 weeks in the set build, and the fourth 2 weeks was solely the underwater sequence.
Right, okay, yeah. I mean, the underwater stuff was amazing. I mean, how much do you... I know you had a DP that I guess that they operate. Who was it?
Yeah, so Mark Silk was the underwater camera operator.
And then do you... Because I've only done a little bit of underwater stuff, and it's... and so, you know, obviously you have an operator and all the people that go with that, and the surface people and stuff. And I lit it. But do you? What was your involvement in the underwater stuff?
Yeah, so basically the same. So Mark was the operator, and Bernie Prentice was the underwater gaffer,
right.
and I lit it from outside basically. Yeah. The hardest thing was Kevin's concept for the underwater stuff was that it was totally black, that you couldn't see anything at all.
Why is that always the note? Yeah,
it's
got to be. There's no light.
There's got to be no light. So and there's kind of, it's also kind of a little bit of a homage to Alien. So we in prep, in order to make things as dark as humanly possible, I thought it would be good if the characters themselves were a light source. So they had inside their helmets, they had three individual. It's like the smallest book light or wedge light that I could create. So it's 3 LEDs in a little line with a little bit of Depron and a little bit of Lee 250 filter on, and one for each eyeball basically, and then an LED helmet light. Yeah. And then the rest of the tank at the U stage was surrounded by basically an individual Keener flow tube. So so 4-foot tubes joined up to each other all the way around, and then it would just light the bit of water that was directly behind their heads, so they had a bit of a silhouette. That was it. The hardest thing was trying to stop them from looking at each other, because as soon as they turned, they'd shine their torches at each other. It was and actors lighting each other is not a useful thing to do. I don't advise.
You can't rely on
that. You can't rely on accurate torch placement.
Yes. So I was going to. I mean, I'm a big fan of a motivation for light, and you had obviously all those practicals. So when I heard you saying before, but we'll say it out now. Yeah. I guess that there was some practical lighting that would have existed on the sub, and I guess that was part of the design. But what did you put any of your own stuff in? Because it looked like it was all intents looked like it was existing prac stuff that was all all the bulkheads and things looked like they'd been there for years.
Yeah, well that was they'd been there for about a week. But it was one of those. So basically the script kind of led us to the thought process that the idea being that Robinson is a lone guy, an island of a man who is alone, in terms of his moral compass. Like, he feels as if he's the only one that knows what is right, basically, and what's good for everybody, kind of thing. And when that gets skewed, he still carries on that trajectory. And so we felt that the greatest enemy of Robinson and the rest of the Submariners is the submarine. So we wanted to turn the submarine into a character, so that evolves as the story evolves. And so each time the characters do something detrimental to each other, the submarine lets them know that what they've done wrong, and the idea being that as each bad event befalls them, the submarine evolves to then send them in another direction. So we felt that we needed to progress from the daylight, first entry to the first setting sail, to the first explosion, to the first grounding, to the death of Peters, and on and on and on. We needed to ratchet up the tension, and we felt that the way to do that was to evolve the look of the space. So we put in, I think I put in between the real submarine and the set submarine about 160 practicals, something like that, and there were reds and blues, and it's a pretty kind of colourful movie. Part of it was atmospheric, part of it was sort of geographical, so that you knew who you were with at one time. You like as you cut around the space, and also the main factor being that the ceiling height of most of the submarine is about 6 foot. So if you wanted to light anybody from above the height of their nose, it had to be either practical or hidden as practical. So so that was part of the sort of philosophy. And Kevin as a director likes to be fairly freeform and when blocking so when the big flooding scene where they all come running in and they put the acro prop in, the only person that knew that there was an acro prop and that the one bit of the set that you could stop flooding was the bit that Jude was attacking. Right. The only person that knew anything was Jude, and everybody else just had to run around the room and kind of look terrified, which I think they managed to do. And so the idea was that we should just create this sort of chaos and then let it unfold on in front of the cameras.
I guess that comes from Kevin's background. He's a documentary maker essentially. Well, he started out as that. So that I've done things where it's about. And it involves shot development based on what characters do. So if they move around, you kind of go with them, which I guess is okay when you've got some space to do that. Yeah. But when that room, that kind of engine room, I guess there was some space to move around, but there really wasn't a lot of space on purpose, and obviously because of the claustrophobia. The shot development was done in the blocking, it felt. So the camera didn't move. Yeah, an awful. You weren't running around quite as much as I know you'd like to, but so they had to do the developing, didn't they? So the takeovers and the
exactly. So the idea being that one character would come into foreground, another character would recede, and it kind of similar in a way to Das Boot in that regard.
So I think the dynamic where you feel like it might suddenly be if the camera's very still, you might think that the dynamic just drops because you're not moving, but actually because there's so many characters as well, you can cut around the room and actually and then all the tension that's coming out of there.
Yeah, exactly. And we tried as much as possible to be switching viewpoints from one character to the next as scenes progressed.
And did you shoot it was an A and a B camera. Did you shoot two cameras all the time, or was it mainly one?
It was pretty much two cameras all the time. As much as it was significantly easier to do in the set build where we were able to cut a number of camera traps and stuff. My focus puller Theo is somewhere in the room. He's like,
I still don't know how you fit Theo in there.
7 foot tall and he's a big lad. And so he was confined to the camera trap. And we did.
In one of the tubes.
Yeah. So we had two Alexa XTs shooting codecs as our main two cameras, and then we had a C500 with a codex and a Canon 1D shooting on its 4K quick times and whatever. But we'd often wouldn't have space for the Alexas because of the size of them. I wish the minis had been invented at the time. So the C500 was used quite a lot in the periscope room. I mean, the periscope room is literally 5 feet in it's a circular room that's 5 feet in diameter and
full of stuff.
Full of a periscope and Jude Law and then me. It was a logistical. The whole submarine thing was a logistical sort of bun fight, but I guess
there was a lot of head banging, lots of.
Yeah, everyone was very, 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 very tolerant. I think that the worst bit of it was that we had to. So in the torpedo room is a real torpedo room, and the actors everyone had to come in through one or the to get on a submarine, you have to get in at one end or the other, basically. And the torpedo room is at one end. So they'd have to come in, then we'd raise up the ladder and then black out the trap and all that kind of stuff, which would take about 10 minutes to do. And then if anyone wanted to leave, they then had to go through 15 hatches to get to the other end of the sub. And Ben Mendelsohn likes to smoke a cigarette. And so we would gauge our ability to shoot a scene on quite how twitchy Ben Mendelsohn had become in the 40 minutes between.
You don't want Ben Mendelsohn being twitchy.
No, Ben Mendelsohn being twitchy is a bad thing. And
that takes a lot of tolerance from everyone, crew and cast and everyone, because you've got there's no room to turn. Literally, you've got to exchange places to move around.
Yeah, but it was great. But I think it just became a real real team effort.
Friendly.
Yeah, everyone became
each other
quite
very
friendly.
well by the end.
Yeah, exactly. And we had and actually the wonderful Russian actors were amazing members of the team, despite the fact that only Konstantin Kobylensky spoke English. The other 4 Russian actors didn't speak any English. So we also had, as well as a crew and 14 actors, we also had an interpreter who was acting as an intermediary.
Wow. Just to speed the process up.
Really sped the process up. Yeah, it really made it easy.
Well, that's impressive. Wow.
Yeah.
So, just I think for me one of the things that really sells the scale and the terror for me, I think very deep water is something that I'm quite scared of, and really big things underwater is the VFX. So I think that from what I watched some behind the scenes stuff over the weekend, working with Union VFX, is that right?
Yeah.
And I think some of the elements that you shot, or the underwater elements that were then scaled back into I think is beautifully done. It's really understated. Often those sort of things they're quite pleased with themselves, aren't they? So you get to see far too much detail. But I think the darkness and the sinking those elements into those enormous vistas was really effective.
Yeah, well, it was. We became, Kevin and I were talking about the sort of, the visual arc of the movie and how we could make the film feel big at times and small at times. And the one problem with the concept of the claustrophobia and the scale of our sets was, you very quickly run out of close-up space. If you want to really make a statement on a line of dialogue, and you've been in a room that's 6 foot by 4 foot for 5 minutes, it's you end up getting into just a pair of nostrils and a single pupil dilating while a line is delivered, and so the underwater sequence that appears in the middle of the film, where they go out for the walk and find the stranded U-boat, was felt that was the moment where kind of hope came back into the story, and actually in our twisted world, hope just led to greed, which led to murder, which led to demise. But for that one fleeting moment of hope, we wanted to put in as much scale as possible. So it's my favourite image of the film is the wide frame of the U-boat with Fraser and Tobin holding a flare aloft, and you see this, the side of the boat, and everything other than the very centre of frame is a bit of VFX work with hundreds of bits of seaweed and bubbles and various things floating by, and it's such a for me, it's the sort of the defining image of Black Sea, really. And without, my bit of it was working out how to. You can't really use underwater flares in U-stage because it fogs the water up. So was making an LED flare thing and putting 2 characters, 40 feet underwater. The VFX team did the rest of the magic, really.
So most of the underwater stuff there was a lot of green screen work under there as well. How do you like the green screen underwater?
Luckily, you don't bother. What you do on day one is you look at it and realise the exercise in futility that it is, and the fact that no matter where you try to light the green screen from, it floods the water with light, and then you have an amazing VFX team who go, it's fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. You know, what about that really horrific lens flare when the actor aims the torch at the camera and then aims it, unreliably back at his friend? It's fine. It's fine. So all of that sequence is predominantly set extension. We had anything that the actors interact with is a chunk of set, but the swathes of U-boat are all VFX.
I think it's the convincer, You don't have to look at it for too long because you just have to see it briefly, and then you're like, well, I'm sold that this is enormous, and it's very deep underwater. I love that. So you mentioned flares. What lenses did you use?
So I used a set of lenses called the Panavision Vintage. Right. Principally, I'm a huge fan of Zeiss Super Speeds. My focus bullet isn't, by the way, but I am. Yeah, no focus bullet. But yeah, I'm a huge fan of Super Speeds. But they were. I felt that they in the Super Speed series, you've got the basically the 18, the 25, and 35, yes. And I didn't feel that was. I felt we were going to be, wider and closer than that. So we used the Vintage because they have a 17. I filled it in with a 21mm Primo, then a 24, 29, 35. So it was, a compact set of,
And did you find that you that there was how many lenses are in a Vintage set?
About 8, I think.
Did you find that you end up using? There are show lenses, so you end up using, there's your wide and there's your mid, and there might be one that you use every now and again for a long. Do you kind of limit, or are you always running through your set?
Because of the logistics, we found that we were pretty much using every lens because you just couldn't, you just couldn't get it back. But I pretty much, I might be speaking at Theo. Are you here? I think it was a 29 and a 40 were the predominant close-up lenses, as it were, and I think the 17 was the one we used. There, as many times as we could, we would, frame up a 17 and then just stack actors in front of it and try to put them in some configuration where you can fit 14. Like literally grabbing someone and going, right, stick your face there. Don't move. No, you moved. But yeah, it was sort of. But I guess the hardest thing about it all was trying to deal with all of that nonsense and actually make something that was energetic and vital and felt like it was of the moment. Because quite frequently we were shooting 7 seconds of the film. So like hit the buttons, set the water jets off. Let's go, and then right, cut. How was that? Just sort of got, we just kind of got going.
It's interesting when you talk about Kevin and about those things that might develop or might be more of a kind of a verite kind of documentary feel. Actually, I think more, the more action stuff that happens, you end up doing lots of teeny tiny bits rather than these long protracted takes where you can roam around or the actors can do all the dynamic for you. So I guess it is those tiny bits, and then they all get, then the edit brings it all to life. Right?
Yeah, I mean that was the hardest thing about flooding the sub was so there's the one moment where the sort of the floodgates kind of burst open and the room goes from being a little bit flooded to hugely flooded, and that was, we had a like a dip tank thing that was attached to the hatch, and 2 tons of water would come through the hole, fill the room up to about 18 inches from the top in about 4 seconds, and then the actors were all stunt doubled for that, and then maybe 5 seconds later it was still as a mill pond again, right. That was it. End of take. So you kind of had to, and then
what was the turnaround?
And the turnaround was about 15 minutes. So it wasn't, but it was like, let's do it. Everyone's ready, and you want to make that 8 seconds as action packed as you possibly can. And
so what camera were you using for that? For the stuff that was the interior submersible, the dipping.
So that was two Alexas in Hydroflex, so handheld in Hydroflex housings, and in that space, yeah. It was good fun though. It's good fun. And you're like, so my grip was sort of carabinered to the roof of the room,
right.
and he would just hold on to my neck like a dog. Right. And then I'd get kind of buffeted around, and he'd just point me at the actors.
Oh, right. So he was operating.
Yeah. Kind of. It was like I was doing that bit, and we were sort of bobbing about. But we discovered that was the technique. We tried lots of others, and they just didn't really work. So
So I guess the other thing that comes in when you were starting, you obviously had a lot of all your practical lighting still going on was about. And I remember I think I had a conversation with Mark Clayton, your gaffer. Yeah. Around the time, or just after you'd finished that, and he was trying to explain to me, obviously, what did you do about power and flooding the room? How did that work?
Actually, well, Mark takes credit for most of the brainstorming, but the idea being that we had the control room at one end, and the control room gets partially wet because that's where Scoot's belt gets stuck into the thing. And so half of the control room was powered at 12 volts, and then all of one corridor was 12 volts, and then the wet room was all at 12 volts. And so it's 12 volts through transformers through the desk. So as the water's flooding in and the lights are flickering, all of those lights that are flickering are chases that Pete, the desk op, had triggered in, and so they flicker for a certain time and go out on a queue, flicker at a certain time, go out on a queue. And
well, it's ingenious.
And it was a necessity, but actually very few of the actors trusted that we weren't going to kill them. Yes. So before we did the wet bit,
frisson of danger to the whole thing.
because it looked all identical. So we had a light on a flicker chase in a bucket by the side of the set. Immersed in a foot of water, and so whenever a cast member came in for it was check the bucket, put your hand in. That's what happens.
That's very sweet of you.
It was just to persuade them to get in, really. But it was it was Mark really that brainstormed all of the 12 volt thing. But it was very complex.
Has anybody got any questions? I don't know if we've reached our time. I don't know where. Yes. Hello.
Yeah, I saw three.
Oh, wait for the mic.
I saw 3 great Steadicam operators on the credits. What do they do?
Jerry Fassbender came in and did the Steadicam that takes Robinson and out of the car towards the house when they first meet the rich guy. I've forgotten the character's name. It's been a while since Blackie. So take Robinson and Blackie out of the car to the house, and then Simon Baker came in to do the Steadicam shot that goes from. Blackie looks at his watch, I think, and Robinson cues the engines. And it goes from one character from Robinson to Blackie to David Threlfall to Michael Smiley as they're setting sail for the first time. And then the third Steadicam operator was Ian Mackay, who I don't think ever got the rig out once he was on the job, but it seemed like a good idea to get another Steadicam. But the idea was it was the single camera show. When I first signed up, Kevin liked the way that I operated, and he works with Anthony Dodd Mansell a lot, and Anthony operates himself, and just wanted to be sort of one-on-one. And then we started having days with 7 cast members, 12 cast members. The deleted scene, the scene that didn't make the cut. As one of my favourites was a scene in a bar in Sevastopol before they get on the submarine, and ends up in a fist fight between all of the submariners. So it's the Russians versus Fraser, basically, and it sets his character up, kind of thing. And it was when we embarked on trying to shoot 14 people in a room in a day that it was deemed wise to use 2 cameras. And Jerry couldn't do the whole movie, and Simon couldn't do the whole movie, and Ian couldn't do the whole movie. So it was a bit of a mix and match. When you're using 2 cameras, what's your favourite way to? Is it side by side on 2 lenses, or is it? It depends. It depends on director to director. Frequently, so I work a lot with Ian Mackay. Frequently, it's a close up and profile. I like to, rather than trying to follow the same sort of light source, I quite like to just do something that doesn't sort of cognitively cut, as it were. So often I try to do something relatively, a standard front-on close-up with the A camera that is exactly what's sort of requested, and then something daft with the B camera that will end up in the edit.
So you sell it to the line producer?
Yeah, exactly. Just something really daft that to just be fun. No, but I find that's the best way to, if you light for the A camera, really the only place to then put a B camera is where the A camera is, which doesn't exist. So the other thing to do is to walk around the room and go, right, where else does the light fall in a cool way? Let's do that.
And obviously then you have to rely on your operator to be able to find that, because do you often the speed that you tend to have to work at, so you can't always see what B camera's up to. So.
Just be a massive control freak.
Yeah.
And feeling that. No, yeah, just have faith that someone has got great eyes and has your back, kind of thing. And I think that's the important sort of character choice of choosing operator.
But in this one, there didn't seem to be many places that they could go, really, because of the.
No, I mean there was a little bit of cross shooting. I mean the hardest thing was there was hardly anywhere to put a light and one camera, and so trying to squeeze the second camera in was always a bit of a trial. But I think actually part of the fun of hopefully part of the fun of the film, but part of the fun of the technique is that you don't do things that you're supposed to do. Shots don't cut like they're supposed to cut, and that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
You can do a conventional close-up, and match a conventional close-up on the other side. But what you can also do is introduce, when you've got 14 people in a room, 2 people are definitely having a conversation, but conceivably the more important relationship is the one that's happening in a different trajectory, and actually that's the one that would frequently gets forgotten about when the clock has ticked the wrong way. So it was, there's a lot of shots between Robinson and Tobin that aren't, their scenes aren't scripted, that those 2 people are in the same room together, but they don't necessarily speak to each other in that scene.
But that's the
relationship. It's important to define that relationship or define that relationship. So used for that, really.
Any questions? Just chuck it's Matthias up there at the back. No, there's more. There we go.
Hello. You spoke the other day on the BSC panel about sort of specialised arm that you sort of made to that shot that goes through the hole into the reveal after the accident. Could you talk a bit more about that and maybe other specialised sort of rigging that you did or anything crazy to get some of those shots?
You quickly learn when you get on the submarine, or ships have the same problems, but nothing is built to fit anything other than the smallest human being moving as quickly as possible to a fire exit, basically. So the interior dimension of the corridor is about 19 inches or something, and the whole, the hatches were 22 inches, something like that from memory, and the same goes for the vertical stuff as well. So when we did the shot what we wanted to do with the shot that tracks in on Robinson is basically wake the submarine back up as Robinson's waking back up. And so that particular pushing, it was a Stinger arm made by Chapman's, but we had on the front of it was a key head, but Warwick, my grip, had machined the bits of the key head so that it was as small as conceivably possible to fit through the 22 inches of the hatch, and then the dolly that you would normally put that Stinger arm on was bigger than the whole submarine. So we had to build a wooden dolly, basically, like the good old days, and build wooden track so that we could get down the yeah. I wish we had a Movi and a Movi and an Alexa Mini would have done the job brilliantly.
Just 1 year later.
But, yeah, just one. Yeah, exactly. 1 year later would have been fine. But we also did. There are the shots that go up towards the hatch as the guys are throwing stuff down. That was a tower cam that was modified. You could only fit a pan module on it. You couldn't fit the tilt module on the key head. So that was modified to do that. And then we built a cable cam descender rig that did the reverse shot of it. And then there were lots of sort of 10-foot slider moves and things. Because the other thing is the floor of a submarine it's flat for about 6 inches, and then there's bolts and various things, and you couldn't get a dolly, and it was but and we unhelpfully we embarked on an entirely handheld technique, and then we felt when we were shooting very wide, with the 14mm and the 17mm, that the handheld version of those lenses felt a little like the ship was moving, probably. So we discovered after day one that we were going to need to rather than handhold the whole movie, which was the intention, the wider stuff we were going to have to, lay tracks and put sliders in and all that kind of stuff. And we did lots of things. In the set build, there's a speed rail rig above everybody's head. We'd never used it at all, but it was one of those things. We're absolutely going to use this speed rail thing. Went the whole length of the ship, just never used it. Damn it. Best laid plans. But yeah, it was lots of modifications to existing stuff to just try to survive the day, basically.
Hello. Just a very quick one. Because most of it takes place in one location, I'm just curious because I second guess myself all the time. It looks fantastic, by the way, but did you ever, in week 5, think, shit, I've got the look wrong?
All the time. All the time. I mean, to be completely honest, the blue colour of the engine room is, in my opinion, an error. The blue colour from the engine room is I think it was Roscoe medium blue, and it was I wanted a blue for it that was different. So the torpedo room is 2 layers of steel blue, and the
onto what?
Onto tungsten. And I knew that I wanted a colour that was separate to that, but I think I can't remember. I tested a bunch of colours. I don't know whether true blue, some colour was preferred, but the Roscoe colour was the only colour that we could dip. That we had a high temperature resin paint that Roscoe make. You can dip the light bulbs and put the colour as practicals in the set that was going to flood. And after the first day of shooting in it, I realised I didn't like it, and there was not very much I could do about it. That's my one regret. I loved the double steel blue. That was cool. Worked really well with the reds. The red was a nightmare. Red on digital cameras is a nightmare colour, and the practical bulbs were all dipped in red gel, and we had to. Mark can probably correct my knowledge of this, but I think we had to dip the bulbs. We had to replace all of the red bulbs on all of the sets. There were about like 8 per set kind of thing, but we had to change them every 3 days because the colour would fade to a pink, basically. And some of them would go after a day, and so that was the other part of the problem. Was every 5th setup, we'd noticed that there was a pink light in the back of shot, and we'd be sending bulbs in. Changing a bulb in a submarine is a ball ache. But yeah, it was tricky. It was tricky. I had to have sort of faith in the process. But you're right. I do regret that one.
No, I wasn't going to say that you were, but just keeping the faith after that long time. And I wanted to say the reds looked amazing because normally they get very murky, and they were just beautifully clean, I thought. So well done to everyone.
Oh, thank you. But yeah, it was. I think you have that on every job. Is if you have, on all the films that I've shot, there's like an overriding philosophy to the photography that either. So with Monsters, it was like no static shot of any kind. Everything was handheld moving, and every now and then that you come to a point where you go, well, do we adhere to the philosophy, or do you go, actually we should just do what feels better. But most of the time, that niggling thought in the back of your mind is either a sense of convention or a worry that you're pushing things too far, or that you won't be accepted, or any one of a number of things. And actually, the bolder choice always wins. It always gets forgiven. It is the director I'm currently working with said it is always better to ask for forgiveness than for permission, and you will always be forgiven. Any of your bold things will be forgiven, but any of your safe things will not necessarily be rewarded, I guess.
Part of the prep process for me is often kind of coming up with those rules that you agree, and I guess what they are, that becomes a shorthand in your relationship with the director. But like you say, is breaking those things, and when you get on them, you can prepare those things beforehand. But then when you're standing in the middle of the room, surrounded by these, by the situation, then your instinct kind of takes over, and that's, like you say, is the best thing.
I think it's you kind of, if you've got a philosophy, like a shooting philosophy, based on a bunch of, so the references for Black Sea were Alien and Blade Runner and Das Boot to a certain extent, but we looked at films like U571 and K, whatever, The Widowmaker, and Crimson Tide, all that kind of stuff, and all of those set on these huge, set build submarines. And like, well, that's not what we want to do. Is it should be sort of the sci-fi version, degenerated sci-fi kind of thing, with bits of Solaris and Stalker thrown in for good measure. And once you get that philosophy between the pair of you on set, as it were, then it kind of acts as a divining rod of what to do next. Yeah. And whenever there's a question, you kind of go, okay, like back to first principles. Let's what would Tarkovsky do? Yeah. He'd probably have a coffee and a think. Would be my guess. Yeah.
Is there any more questions? Is that it? How are we doing, Audra? Where's Audra gone? Oh, there is.
Post-production, talk about that.
Yeah, it was. So it was colour time. It was a slightly awkward post-production process, in as much as Kevin's previous films had been colour timed by Adam Glassman at Company 3. At the time we were making the film, there was the Company 3 thing was going on, but probably best not to talk about it here. And so we worked with Company 3 and a wonderful colourist called Adam Inglis. And Adam came in and he colour timed Last King of Scotland for Kevin, so he was sort of in the trusted inner circle, and we spent a lot of time trying to, I guess, pretty much bring out the best of everything colour-wise.
Did you get much time in the? Because I know it often happens is you're working, so you don't get. Did you get as much time?
Yeah, we had 2 weeks in the grade. I think I was in there for about a week and a half, and we spent a lot of time tweaking red. Yeah. As a lot of time tweaking red, and I spent a lot of time trying to make it darker, and Kevin spent a lot of time making it brighter. And we came to a middle ground for the underwater stuff, but it's interesting. It's just trying to find the hue of the underwater sequence. So it's it's a kind of a very specific cyan, and then when you say that's the one, you then get hugely disappointed when the next shot doesn't quite match up. And we did have a slight issue. When we were doing the underwater work, the pool, the underwater stage, turned fluorescent green halfway through our second week of shooting there, and so we did a couple of inserts with the fluorescent green water before we had to call insurance companies and get all of that put to bed. And so there was a lot of matching up of that kind of stuff, and just pretty much the normal stuff, but really it was more the specific hues, trying to find the right level of sick yellow for that room, and
and I guess you can only have so much control over if you're moving quickly. Because you were saying about how the tones change, so I guess did you exert some control in the colouring?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we had a lot of the film starts off and it's sort of lit from above, clean white, and then we start introducing the colours, and then slowly as the film progresses, the lights get lower and lower and lower and dimmer and dimmer and dimmer, and we were experimenting with all sorts of LED panels. It's a testament to the art of light invention that even an LED panel that's 1 centimetre thick was still in shot in a submarine, laying on the floor, beneath a bunch of characters. And so we had all these different sizes and shapes and discs and various things, and all dimmed to 30%, 40%, blah blah blah. And so it was kind of, I guess, tidying the film up and getting the hues kind of spot on.
Well, I loved it. I think it's edge of the seat stuff. So have we got time for more? Is that where? Yeah, there we are. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, Laurie.
Christopher Ross.